creating more objects. They're instantiating a whole lot more strings, yet they're not calling document write nearly as frequently. And just to go back to this other one, you could see those ratios hold pretty well. You could, the bar graphs are broken by the magnitude of those different values, and so there is definitely a visual pattern there.
So the future of Caffeine Monkey. We're not saying we found an end-all be-all placebo solution to internet security, and nobody has that. But we found that we do provide a lot of visual and statistical analysis of what makes a malicious JavaScript or malicious or benign versus benign JavaScript, along with multiple other things that you see throughout your statistical analysis. You can just say what calls are being used most in the wild, things of that nature. So we're releasing this week. It's going to be released on the SecureWorks Research Tools page. It should be out tomorrow sometime. Post it up. It's already on its way. So, do everybody a favor, expand on it a little bit, save everybody some time. There's a ton of analysts out there who are doing this JavaScript deobfuscation by hand or as part of an incident response. And this is going to help everybody out in the long run and make us be able to concentrate further down the line and get to securing these web apps. So there's lots of different ways that this could be used. It could be included in a proxy potentially, in some sort of IPS, IDS device, some sort of fuzzy logic, heuristics, in addition to a signature-based approach, because as we've seen, signature-based approaches, if that's all you're doing, you're going to fail because there's so many different ways in JavaScript. I mean, it's a full programming language, and you can express things in any way, any number of ways. Also, possibility of a Firefox plugin if somebody wanted to get really creative, of having a sandbox JavaScript environment to run things in before it actually got passed up to the JavaScript interpreter within Firefox itself. So that kind of concludes our talk. I wanted to finish up a little early because there's a lot of reception activity happening out there. But we want to have plenty of time for Q&A. I know and
we've got one to start with right here.
Well,
and then they run their obfuscated code with something else that makes it look
right.
like banana job.
Right. So the question.
That's a good point.
The question is, what happens when the attackers start modeling their JavaScript to look the same as the benign stuff? Well, it happens. It's an arms race. But as we've seen time and time again, attackers don't tend to change their attack pattern until it's not working anymore. So as soon as something like this gets really implemented and out there a lot, then you can solve the problem, or at least make it a lot less common. But if nothing ever changes, then it's just going to be the same old, same old.
And you're exactly right that when we're discussing on our team the results, someone said, well, if these results were published or if this kind of protection technology based on these ratios or the relative frequency of calls was actually widely deployed and was affecting the yield of these attacks, well, then as an author, wouldn't you try to write your JavaScript so its footprint or its fingerprint look just like the ad syndicators or just like Google Analytics? So yes, this has a potential for arms race, and the potential also could be that if this was affecting the author's ability to exploit your machines, they may start coding the scripts to match fingerprints of benign stuff. So that could impact the effectiveness of this approach in the longer term. You're right.
I'm sorry? Well, we haven't exactly developed a full algorithm to definitely show, or this is malicious or this is benign. We've got some good ideas. We haven't fully fleshed out a function that you can just pass things into and say, is it good or bad? But you can visually see, and when you look through the logs, you can definitely see, because you're tied in at that debugger level and seeing what's actually done. So right now, there's still a little human heavy on the analysis, but it saves a lot of time just running it through, and then you can look at it that way.
We'll get the green shirt and then you next.
Does Caffeine Monkey operate sort of an event-driven system? Like if you're analyzing what's coming through
So the idea being kind of detection of the same origin policy or violations of that, where you're getting code from one domain and it's pulling resources off other domains. The tool doesn't do that now, but I think that's definitely would be a good idea to extend it. Basically, you could look, since we've hooked all the critical functions in there, you could look at the arguments and you could break down the URL perhaps and look at, okay, well, I'm at this domain, it's requesting from something in another domain, but that's not built in at the moment. Now, you raised the question about an event model, and that's definitely something on our radar screen to build into the tool. We made the decision basically on time and resource constraints not to hook all the on-event handlers. We know that's something we want to do, but basically in the time constraints, that kind of functionality is not in the engine at present.
Brown shirt.
Okay, so this is just following up to Billy's question here. I understand that you don't have full algorithm, that's not the product, so you're not saying that something is definitely malicious versus definitely clean. But if you were to take your own libraries, put all your own malicious JavaScript in there, and use your algorithm on that, and then use the same algorithm on known clean stuff, what kind of percentage are you getting with X percent assurances?
And right. So the question is really, have we validated this against different corpuses of data? What kind of false positive, false negative are we talking about? At this point, the research is pretty in a fairly early stage in that we're just developing kind of the heuristics, and we're kind of discovering some of the characteristics of these two things. So no, I don't have any good hard numbers for you on that. At present, this technology is not deployed inline in the field. It's not blocking stuff, but that's definitely on the roadmap for how we want to continue this research. But I don't have strong false positive numbers for you right now.
Yeah, without
we can make the data available. However, with the tool release, we're going to be making the graph data, the MySpace data available. And if you send us email, we could definitely drop you a database dump of what we're working with. So to follow along on that, we don't have hard numbers. We haven't dropped it into like a statistical analysis program to say like known clean versus known malicious and seeing what the ratios there after we feed in other stuff after it's learned or anything like that. But just on the human analysis level, you can really tell, like easily as an individual looking at it, but programmatically, no. A black shirt again.
Why did you decide to make the solution open source? Because this way you help bad guys to get some information how your mechanism works and to improve their obfuscation
Right.
techniques.
Well,
What was the reason of making it open source?
It's a good question. So basically the question was, by releasing this code and by publishing these results, are we just not helping the attackers to increase their game? Well, typically you're not going to be given a tool talk at BlackHat unless you're willing to open source it. But we figured, like many security tools, it's a double-edged sword. A lot of the tools out there, have good uses and bad uses, and this could be a case of one. I mean, I could imagine the scenario where a malicious JavaScript author uses this tool to look at the fingerprints of his work and to make sure, okay, this is clean enough, this is going to bypass security mechanisms. I don't have a real good answer. We felt that this was something that should be released into the community for others to enhance on it, to build on it, and maybe the other scenarios, Firefox plugins, IDS proxies, heuristic devices. But we felt that it was the right thing to do, basically, to open source it. And just like many tools, there's really dual uses for it. Blue?
You said before safe and lightweight. I guess it's lightweight, but what are the main aspects that make Caffeine Monkey safer than executing it in the JavaScript view? You send a request, what's to prevent someone from exploiting vulnerabilities in SpiderMonkey
So the question is, why is it safe? What's to keep people from exploiting SpiderMonkey itself? Well, there might be vulnerabilities in there, but as we said, the SpiderMonkey code base that we built on is very mature and it's been around for a long time. And vulnerabilities in JavaScript engines themselves are becoming less and less common as they're very deep down. That said, the tool could have some vulnerabilities. Anyone's foolish to say their product doesn't have vulnerabilities in it. It's the nature of the beast.
And in the current usage of it is essentially a post-processing step. So we would crawl a target, we would index all the information into a database, and then we'd run post-processing analysis where we would feed the scripts into Caffeine Monkey. Caffeine Monkey stores the results into some various database tables. And so it's not quite as interactive as a VM with a browser requesting a page from the web and executing it. So we think that in that post-processing model, it's probably safer. You could run the process that is analyzing these as least privilege. It doesn't have to have any network access other than to the database which stores the samples.
And you wouldn't necessarily need to have access to that. You could download the samples, and then SpiderMonkey itself doesn't have a network stack. But if you're running it all at the same time in a combined tool, then it's feasible that it could go up like that. But as it stands, SpiderMonkey has no network access. Orange shirt?
So just to play devil's advocate, if it was to encounter wild true, what would happen?
Well, it looped. It's a JavaScript interpreter. The question was, what happens if it comes across a while one, while true, something like that. And as it actually is interpreting the JavaScript, it would loop. However, I believe, and don't quote me on this, is that there's things in the JavaScript compilers to detect that and error out before it gets to the interpretation of the bytecode phase.
But, right.
That's right.
So he mentioned in the SpiderMonkey code they've got something defined as a max recursion depth or max branch. So it may detect, that it gets in this condition and exits out under some error condition. But in a naive case, if that wasn't there, yeah, our tool would spin off just like your browser would.
Dark shirt and then light shirt, and I think that's all.
You said that you were getting a list of scripts to test with your tool by looking at command type. Do you have any idea what percentage of the scripts out there on web pages are actually served as a .js or command type of JavaScript as opposed to embedded within a web page or just served within a command type?
The question is, MIME types are how we determine our JavaScript mostly. And so what are we going to do about that, or how do we find it? What are the ratios of that? I'm not sure about the exact ratios. It was an easy way to pull down and get a lot of data quickly, and there are a lot of